Hello, everyone's Forest focus as Nottingham Forest. Let's make it 4 wins from 4 in this bracket of Premier League fixtures when they take on Newcastle United at the City Ground in the final game before the international break on Sunday. Can they do it to stay third in the league? Joining me to discuss that and the imminent England squad announcement are, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, good morning or good afternoon by 3 minutes. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Feeling like a bit of a pauper this morning because I'm sitting here in Bingham, Temps is in Florida, and Greg's waiting for a chauffeur-driven limo to come and pick him up.
Greg did say before we start recording, I've got a car coming for me at 1 p.m. and without any context at all. So yes, you can add that if you want, Greg Mitchell. But how are you?
Do you know when you're talking about 4 wins on a row? When I was faffing about trying to get ready, like with a minute to go, I found my Sheffield Wednesday ticket. You can't even see it. From that was the game that got cancelled due to COVID. The game before, I think we'd lost 4-0 at home to like Millwall or something. And I'm just sat here listening to you saying that, looking at that ticket, thinking, what a different world. 4 Premier League wins in a row, potentially. It's incredible.
It is indeed. It is indeed. We'll get into that a little bit more shortly, but we'll introduce Michael Temple. Temps, good morning to you. How are you?
Good. You get used to having an inferiority complex when Greg's around. Gary never wants to hang around with him. He's always doing bits down the club. People asking for selfies. So yeah, just strap in, Pete. That is standard around there.
Yeah, I mean it's more Carragher than Neville. I think Neville probably hates you, doesn't he, Greg?
Yeah, they've ditched me anyway. I'm on next week, and it's a whole new lineup. So don't think either of them are showing up. I think they're sick of us doing so well. So
we've seen them off.
Exciting new lineup next week, apparently.
Oh, excellent stuff. Look out for that, everyone. Look out for it. As Joe says, thank you very much for this, Joe. Do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. You can become a paid member. So thanks very much for that, Joe. And good morning to everyone who's with us already. Pete, do you want to kick us off? How are you feeling about this game? Last one before another international break, as we say. How are you feeling about it?
Pretty good. I think the privilege of being in the position that we're in with such a good run of form behind us and so many players playing at the top of their game is that I can go into a game like this with any great sense of fear. If we lose, then so be it, 'cause it's going to happen at some point, relatively soon, presumably. But really, it just feels like another opportunity to see what this side can do, how we measure up to a different threat in the Premier League table again, and how this team can adapt to those things. I think that's really the intrigue for me. I think Newcastle are a very different side to the teams we've played of late, and obviously individual quality in areas like you expect of any Premier League team, really, but I think they're a real physical, athletic threat as much as anything, with bodies in the middle of the pitch and athletes across the side, really. Obviously not a brilliant start to the season by the sort of recent standards, I guess. A good win last time out at Arsenal, but that's one win in their last 6 Premier League games, including a few that they would have hoped to do much better. So I fancy us to take the game to them and hopefully get something out of it. But I'm just, again, really sort of intrigued to see how we can keep rising to different challenges.
Yeah, Newcastle are 11th. They're only 4 points behind us, so it is that stage of the season where it's very condensed. As Pete says, Arsenal was their first win in 5 in the league. They also beat Chelsea, though, in the Cup, Carabao Cup, before the Arsenal game. And it sounds like the Arsenal win was certainly their best performance of the season. They nullified Arsenal very well. When you look at the games we've had, Temps, in this bracket of fixtures, Palace, Leicester, West Ham, they're probably in a slightly different place and different quality bracket to Newcastle. So are you wary of this one, or do you feel confident because we would have the confidence of the playing squad, I guess?
I think it's the first coin flip game we've had in this run of 4, if you like. Going into it, there's not too much between the sides on paper other than that injection of confidence. We look like a team. The Liverpool thing you could put down as a flash in the pan, bit of a rearguard action, nicks a goal when we needed to. But it hasn't been the case since then. And the question I've been asking is, how sustainable are these performances? In the midfield, it's sustainable because we've dealt with so much injury and suspension, still found players that can replace it. That back 4 on merit is performing amongst the very best in the league, and we're finding ways to score goals. So I do think it's a knife edge. I do respect Newcastle and their squad and their players far more than I do West Ham United, but we have to be confident, right? One of the form teams in the division, certainly the surprise package, and we're just unburdened. There's no one in this squad now, with the possible exception of Yatesy, who's been through it and lived it, that has any kind of negative experience of what it took to be a Forest fan for 21 years outside of the Premier League. And that confidence, you can just see it in the boys, in the warm up, in the games from the off, just where we're taking games to teams, feels to me like the opposition are having to analyse us far more than they ever have in the past. And Newcastle United will be having a similar debate about how to stop Nottingham Forest, rather than us having to think how we're going to impose ourselves on them. So I go into this game with a great deal of confidence. I think in reality, it is a bit of a knife edge. All 3 results possible, all 3 outcomes possible, but we have to be confident.
The Temple Junior 1 and 2 want to weigh in on this or not?
Yeah, I think Evan might be making his debut in a sec. He's bound to come and jump on my knee. I think Rosa's been on the podcast before when she was sat quietly like a little angel in my car when we were chatting before.
For the whole show, yeah.
Yeah, the little man's a little bit harder to control.
Bring him in, don't worry. Right, like Temp says there, Greg, like Newcastle are good, but like Fletcher was saying a few weeks ago on here, it'd be interesting to see what Forest play like without pressure and without, releasing the shackles a little bit. It feels like we're sort of there already after last week and the Newcastle game. Do you have to think we kind of adopt that mentality of sort of as much no pressure as you can have in a Premier League game right now, in a way?
Yeah, and Temp summed it up perfectly. These players don't have the burdens that we've got as fans. You've seen it many years, like the negativity seeps out into the onto the ground, and I think that's what Newcastle fans will be doing this weekend. They're looking at Anderson and looking at Chris Wood, thinking, "Oh no, one of them two's bound to score against us," and that does seep out. You feel it. So I'm just excited. I think this is a real good test at home. We haven't beat one of the teams you really love to beat yet, and at home, and this is one of them. And I think we're more than capable of doing it. You see all the videos and the match day passes and stuff after games, and it just makes you realise how good this squad is, how together they are, and how confident they are. It's ridiculous. I've never seen a team like this play for my club. I genuinely haven't. And we go into Sunday thinking we can absolutely beat Newcastle, and potentially should. The pundits have changed the tune. They'll be expecting us to get a result, and the fans are ready for it. So I can't wait. And 4 on the bounce. I don't know how long that's been. Someone will be able to tell us, I'm sure, but that's something that we should really, really be trying to get, and we can do.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone knows the answer to that, do drop it in the chat. Morning to Tony, who's in Paris, asking if Nuno's touchline ban is finished. Yes, it is. And he's already said he'll come back. But shout out to Rui Pedro Silva, who got a sensational booking in the last game for running down the touchline after Hudson-Odoi scored. But yeah.
I missed that.
You missed it?
Yeah, I didn't.
It went full Mourinho.
Brilliant.
It was. It was obviously from a set piece that's worked. I mean, to be fair, when you've had our set piece record for a year or two, you're going to have a bit of a reaction of jubilation when you see one come off like that. But we have got a lot better, and he's done a good job.
It's funny how we're still top of the table for like conceding via set pieces over the past year, even though we're arguably like the best at it at the minute. It just shows how terrible we were, and it's going to take a while to get off that top spot for that one.
Yeah, we were genuinely horrific, but those days are gone. Touch wood. Right, we'll get into our lineups shortly. Just before that, loads of chat about the referee being Anthony Taylor for this game. Greg discussed it on Tuesday on our phone-in, which was wonderful. And if you haven't seen it, do check it out. I'll ask Temps first. I know what Pete's answer is going to be to this, but what do you make of Taylor being referee, if anything, Temps?
I don't like Anthony Taylor, but one of the great hallmarks of this little run is we haven't been talking about referee controversies. We've barely noticed the officials, and I think it's long been said, there's an old adage that the best ref is the one you don't notice. And I think that's been the case in the last few weeks. So I hope this game's about Forest and Newcastle, about Morgan Gibbs-White and Chris Wood, and not about Anthony Taylor. I defend refs to a point. I think I don't believe there's any great controversy about them targeting any particular team, but that there are certain figures that seem to be at the centre of these game-affecting decisions, and Anthony Taylor is one of them. But let's hope we can get through this game without noticing him.
Yeah, hopefully so. He's just been a magnet for controversy, not just with us, but for about a year now, for whatever reason. But I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. I hate talking about refs, especially before a game. I imagine you're going to say the same thing, Pete, but take it away.
Well, why don't you deliver my answer for me, since you're so confident about that?
Okay, if I was going full Pete Blackburn, I would say I don't care. I've got nothing to say about it, and I'd just like to move on. I think is what you're going to say.
Yeah, I'll take that. You're not miles off. I mean, I would have been happy to go into it in a little bit more detail, but I just don't think it's something that we should be worried about. I saw a few fans on Twitter and other places talking about how we shouldn't have referees that we've been involved in controversy refereeing our games.
Bloody referees, then,
that sort of stuff. Well, there's that, and there's also, I mean, it feels slightly questionable to have that view if you also think that we shouldn't be getting special treatment in a negative way as well. You know, I mean, you can't really balance those things out. But yeah, you're more or less right. I don't really care. Let's focus on us. We can get a result, and hopefully it doesn't interfere in things too much.
Yeah, I think so. Everyone's doing this job for me already. Thank you, Peter. Do hit like and subscribe. It makes a big difference and only takes a second if you haven't done it already. Okie doke. We'll go into our lineups shortly. Just before that, though, a quick advert for the Trent Navigation. Just to remind you that there is another gig straight after the match on Sunday. It's free entry and the band is The Money. Will you be there, Greg Mitchell, after attending the M&M one last week?
Yeah, the M&M one was surprisingly good. Like, hands up, I wasn't expecting much, and it was.
There's a quote for the poster.
They sound brilliant. That's right up my street. So I've got an early start Monday morning, but I'm sure I'll make it there for one celebrationary lemonade after the game.
Yeah, I mean, let's not pretend an early start's ever stopped you before, if we're being honest. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be there. Good man. Right, let's get into our lineups then. There's probably only one big selection decision to discuss, although maybe people in the comments will want to see a few different changes. So do let us know how you're thinking about it. I'll start with Greg and Temps submitted the same team, so I shall read this out for the benefit of people who are listening, not watching. We have got pretty obviously the same defence. So Sells in goal, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo and Moreno. Then Yates and Anderson in midfield. Ilanga, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi in support of Wood, which means Nicholas Dominguez is missing out in your starting 11. Greg, kick us off. Why are you unchanged?
Well, no, I brought Anderson in.
Why are you bringing Anderson in? Sorry, one of us is unchanged. Why are you bringing Anderson in?
My mate Joseph on the fan phoning absolutely convinced me of the reasons as to why. And Dominguez has been unbelievable. He starts in any game. Unfortunately, we can't start with 12 players. And I think Anderson has to start against his old team. I think you look at that squad and it's that team, and it's such a solid team, an exciting team. Pace, it's got the defensive mind in the middle as well. I love it. So that'd be it, but it would not matter one iota if Dominguez had to come in for one of them as well. But yeah, it's a tough one for Nuno, but an exciting one because he's got such a strong bench.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions, Temps. Weigh in with your view on why you're unchanged. But does it matter that much when we're in this good of form and players coming off the bench and making an impact? Is it so decisive that we don't start with Dominguez or don't start with Anderson?
Well, there's a role to play for the bench players for sure, because we've got lads that can change the gear. Jota Silva's a good example of that. That's not a defensive-minded substitution. There are players that can come on, as Morata has been, if we wanted to have three centre-halves to see something out. But I think looking at this team here in front of us, that back four do not need to be rested or rotated. They're robust, maybe slightly unkind to Nico Williams. I think there's a bit of a moat between those four and the next best. However, we're stockpiled in central midfield. And the way to turn that to our advantage is to have an element of rotation. And I think that's what this is. Anderson and Silva were the first subs off the bench last time out. He's in a rotation with the likes of Nico Dominguez, in time with the likes of Danilo and Sangare. Yates has made himself undroppable for me in recent weeks just by doing what Ryan Yates does in a gear beyond anything he's done before, hence why he retains his place for me. But I like what Greg said. If I see Nico Dominguez name in the starting lineup on Sunday, won't be disappointed, been outstanding, doesn't deserve to be dropped. We've got to use this advantage of having so many match ready central midfielders that can slot in, slot out, hit the ground running, stay fresh, use those legs. And I do like the subplot of Elliot Anderson coming back to haunt Newcastle United. We didn't want to sell him, but kind of had to. But he was a surprise package for us. I hadn't done too much research or noticed him too much in the Premier League last season. I think he's an outstanding prospect, and he can make a real difference in this game.
Just dipping into comments very, very quickly. Total tangent, but I saw this earlier. Mark Robbins sacked as commentary manager after losing to Derby, which could be a sackable offence, but it does feel a bit harsh. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. Sharmake, who was wonderful on Tuesday's show, right at the end, saying do like and subscribe. And this comment from Paul, which was one I was going to highlight. I'd actually dropped Yates before Dominguez. Pete, I'll come to your team in a sec, but just weigh in on that. It's so hard to drop one of them. You have them, but Yates. So is Yates, as Temp says, as undroppable as you can be right now, or not?
I think he is. I'm sort of intrigued to see what's coming next, because I'm pretty sure this is the team that I've picked as well.
Well, yeah, but you made me do a whole new graphic, so I went the extra mile for you. All right, I'll bring up your graphic.
This is exciting.
Yeah,
I hope you got it right.
Well, probably not.
I mean, it's just moving each one about one person like a millimeter, but whatever.
No, I'll show you. Thank you very much to Richard for signing up to become a channel member as well. Appreciate that, Richard. Yeah, I mean, your team is basically the same, and I did it because you fret so much about this. On one hand, I'm very grateful. On the other, I worry about your life choices and how indecisive you are. If this is how you agonize over things, you sent me like an apology to Nico Dominguez, but all you wanted me to do was move Gibbs White back a little bit.
That's absolutely groundbreaking. That
I know, make it more.
At least you got it right though this time.
I mean, I probably haven't. I don't know if I have or not. Is that what you wanted, Pete Blackburn?
It's fine, Alec. Yeah, I'll accept it. Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, no, well done. I appreciate you doing that. It's much better than I was expecting. I thought you were just going to put a few players in there that I hadn't picked. So that's good.
I'm getting better.
Matt, I think what I would say is James Ward-Prowse has fallen down the pecking order, and I think there's a bit of hindsight in that decision that he made prior to his sending off, not being the one, because I fully expected him to come in and be a bit of an anchor point, a bit of a focal point for the side beyond the set pieces. Ante Elanga has stepped up and done a fantastic job, I think, in whipping the best corners I've seen in the last 2 or 3 seasons. So it's kind of diluted his stock a little bit. And whilst I've just eulogized about the options we have in central midfield, I think it's James Ward-Prowse that finds himself out of favour at this point.
Yeah, I think first that's a good point about corners. Like Elanga's corners in the ground, I've seen him on TV and they're decent in the ground. He's absolutely whipping them in. So that is a good point. As Phil says as well here, has Ward-Prowse disappeared from everyone's thoughts? I mean, would you be shocked, Greg, if Ward-Prowse was in the team? Because I don't think I would, actually, if he was.
I'd be more shocked if Ward-Prowse was in than Dominguez was in, obviously. Like you say, I think Elanga's just come on so well with his corners. They're superb. They're exciting. We get a corner now. There's a massive buzz in the ground, which I thought only Ward-Prowse can bring, but Elanga's managed to do that. So it's who comes out of that 11 for Ward-Prowse before Dominguez as well. It's such a tough one. And there'll be surprises. There will absolutely be surprises at 1:15 or whatever time it comes out now on Sunday. There'll be a surprise in there. There always is there. He's never afraid to change a winning team, and it's worked for us so far.
Well, the one thing I chuck at you is that there'll be no surprise in that back five. Just been absolutely outstanding. The individual performances, the chemistry as well, the covering for each other's strengths, the manner in which Aina and Moreno bomb on, but fundamentally, Milenkovic and Murillo being real defenders, winning their duels, winning their aerial battles, defending the near post better than I think we ever have, and somehow being able to be progressive as well. Milenkovic playing within himself, using the guys around him to disperse from the back, happy playing a 15, 20-yard lateral pass. It's just refreshing, isn't it? And one of the reasons to explain our success, we have an absolutely solid back four that allows us to maintain this shape without any debate about 3 at the back or anything else. I think now we'd always be more confident to play the 4 against the so-called big 6. In the past, it's been a part of our armory to chuck in an extra centre half. But yeah, these 4 just seem inked into me for the foreseeable.
I just look at that team and you think you cannot believe that's Nottingham Forest. It really does feel like, the first 2 seasons, obviously we got through and we managed to survive. But you look at that team now and it's just, there's absolute stars in there and they're only getting better. They've got so many years ahead of them to keep growing. And if it's with us, it's going to be frighteningly good.
You want to come in, Pete? Because I've had your team for about 10 minutes and you've not said a word about it. So do you want to explain your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what Tam said at the start of the podcast about this being a bit of a coin flip game is a sort of important point. So when I looked at this game, and I know you like to take the piss out of me for agonising over it, I think it is a case of balancing what the threat of the opposition is alongside what our threat can be and how we get away out of winning this game. So, I mean, if you look at the lineup they played last time out, I think there's a question as to whether they give us the same sort of level of respect that they gave Arsenal, or whether they perhaps bring Harvey Barnes into that lineup and play in a slightly more aggressive way. But I'm sort of going off the expectation that they'll have a similar lineup, and that means a powerful, athletic, dynamic 3 central midfielders who aren't necessarily the most ambitious in Willock, Guimaraes and Longstaff. Oh, you've got it. Very good. I didn't know you were going to do that. I love that. So that is incredibly physical, athletic, and you add Joe Linton into that, who can come narrow, who'll come and get involved in central areas, and that is that's a serious number of bodies in central areas that we are going to have to think about. And our system obviously means that there are often only 2 in those central areas. With out of possession, Gibbs White is going to be helping to cut down passing lanes with Chris Wood and such like. I think he's going to have to be mindful about dropping in, and one of the wingers might have to as well, in the sense that they did in that second half against Leicester. So there's that to worry about, and I think that precipitates for me Elliot Anderson being in the team if he's fit enough to start. He brings physicality in a way that I don't think Dominguez does. I think there have been games for Forest where Dominguez can be slightly outmuscled against really, really physical opposition centre mids. He's very athletic in some aspects. He covers a lot of ground and an awful lot of energy, and he's very tenacious. But I think Anderson and Yates gives us a sort of a power and a strength in there that I think gives us our best chance of competing with them. But the other main issue, I think, is that for Newcastle to be effective, they have to play with that high line. They're going to press from the front, and they need to be high up the pitch in order to be able to do that well. So if they're going to bring the game to us in any sense, or play to their strengths, they'll have to do that. And that means Elanga has to play as well. We have to have that option of the pace of Elanga to get in behind and to keep them honest as well. Otherwise, we could easily be well pinned in and really struggling to get out. So those are the sort of balances for me. And I feel really hard that Dominguez should feel really hard done to, because he's had a great run of form, and I'd be slightly worried about whether you're bursting his bubble a little bit. But these tough decisions obviously have to be taken, and they're a sign that we're in a good place doing well. So I think that's the sort of the balancing factors for me. So that's how I come to the team that I do.
Possible Newcastle team is on the screen, as Pete said. So I'll just read out for people who are listening. This isn't nailed. I think it's a predicted one from Rob, who's on tomorrow's opposition show. So it's Pope in goal, Livramento, Fabian Schär, Dan Burn and Lewis Hall across the back, and then a midfield 3 will be Longstaff, Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Willock, not Tonali, who someone mentioned in the comments, sorry. That's what a possible one. And then Gordon and Joe Linton wide with Isak through the middle. That's a possible Newcastle team, and as Pete says, it is pretty physical and dynamic. I'll just put up my team and we can chat around that. So I'm the only one that's got an unchanged team from the West Ham game. So it would be, I'll just read out quickly. Sells, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo, Moreno, Yates and Dominguez in midfield, Elanga, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi and Wood. A couple of thoughts behind it around Dominguez and Anderson, mostly around Dominguez. I hadn't thought of the physicality thing, but I still don't mind that. I think because he's so tenacious that he's not going to make it easy for anyone, so I'm fine with playing him there. And the other thing was around bursting his bubble a little bit. Like, he's playing so well, and he's finally getting his chance. And you could take a player out of a team, like we did Hudson-Odoi at Anfield, he'll know will come back in and probably start the next one. But Dominguez is in such good form that I think if you were to drop him, partly it would be a real blow to the player. But also, I don't think you need to. Like, I look at that team, and I would back it to match Newcastle and then have Anderson off the bench to change the game. And to be honest, if I was going to drop any of those midfield 3 and bring Anderson in, it would actually be for Gibbs White, which I know sounds completely mental, But I just love that Yates and Dominguez axis right now. Maybe it won't be the same in a few weeks, and form changes and injuries happen, as we've seen with Danilo and Dominguez, and Ward. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Ward-Prowse is in the team in 2 or 3 games. But right now, I just love Yates and Dominguez and don't see a need to break them up particularly, especially as we've got an international break coming up. So I don't massively see a need for any rotation. And obviously, whoever comes off the bench is going to have a really big part to play. But I like Anderson as an attacking option off the bench, probably more than bringing Dominguez off the bench. He feels like someone you bring off the bench if you're trying to contain a game and see a result out, which might be the scenario. But that's my thinking anyway. Any of you lads got any thoughts on that?
I'd love that team straight off. That's the beauty of having this good squad. I like how the Grim Reaper's straight in the comments saying he needs to drop a player. But yeah,
have to drop Elanga. Why do you have to drop Elanga, Steve?
And Murillo can't pass either, apparently. But it's just brilliant, isn't it? That you could put that team up and straight away. I think I'd start that one, and then you chuck ours up again, and you go, yeah, I'll have that straight away. I think we've got such strength and excitement, and they'd have done their analysis down to an absolute T, and they'll know exactly which player is going to have the biggest effect against the Newcastle side. So it's exciting. It'll be dead interesting, and it's also on fitness. We don't know what's happened. Anderson missed the open training session the other week. We don't know whether he is carrying something. So maybe with Dominguez doing so well, this will be the one, and Anderson comes off the bench again. But it just doesn't matter. The confidence is there. I don't see ourselves seeing a team and going, why has he done that anymore? You just trust him.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, we haven't seen all the video analysis that they've done. We don't know player fitness. There's loads of factors that go into it. And as Greg says, any team that we put out, I'm sure we'll all be happy with. Steve says he's leaving Elanga out to get Anderson in for people who are listening. So, yeah,
I think of all the games we've played this season, aside from Brighton, this is the obvious Elanga game for me. If we know that there's a team coming to the City Ground who are going to play with a relatively high line and are going to try and impose themselves on the game to a decent degree, I think personally would be a little bit mad not to include Elanga in this team. I just think this is his chance to get back to his absolute best.
Paul asks, when's Nuno's press conference? It's tomorrow, Paul. It's normally on a Thursday because we're playing on a Sunday. I think it'll be tomorrow at 1:30. So we'll know about injuries then. Temps, anything you want to add before we move away from the game?
Well, interesting seeing the 4 out-and-out wingers on the pitch. I mean, you might classify Joe Linton in a slightly different manner, but I think the wide boys have a big part to play in this. Livramento's certainly not slow and likes to abandon his post as well, so that'll be interesting to see how he does that. Moreno and Aina, similar profiles of defender, I think, as well. So, yeah, I think the impact of the wide players will be key. I'd be surprised to see anything other than Hudson-Odoi and Elanga starting just off the back of recent form, but also what that shape brings to us. Players often double up on Callum Hudson-Odoi, create so much space inside, and with the creativity of Gibbs-White back in the side just makes us more dangerous and more likely to score. I do see both teams scoring in this game. I'm sure we're going to come on to predictions at some point, but I don't see either side keeping a clean sheet in this. I think it's going to be hallmarked by a bit of adventure from the wide players in both sides, and there's just so much creativity around the pitch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't normally do predictions, but we'll do just in general. Greg, would you, I'm probably asking the wrong person here. It feels like a game maybe where both sets of fans and players would maybe shake hands on a point and think it's not a bad result before the match. As we sit here now, would you think the point's, acceptable?
No, it doesn't feel like that kind of game at all. We beat teams like Newcastle now, and I don't know whether it's going to be a cagey, horrible type of game because they are so physical. But yeah, we beat Newcastle. I really, truly believe that. And I don't think this will be the game that stops this run.
Yeah, I mean, I was on a Newcastle podcast and was asked to predict the score, and I did say 2-1 Forest because, Pete, I think I can see them scoring against us, but equally I can't see them keeping us out. So either 1-1 or 2-1. I said 2-1 in the end. Yeah, what about you? Would you take a point?
No, I wouldn't take a point. At the end of the game, I'd be relatively happy with it. But I want to see what this Forest side can do in all the games that we play, and I don't think there are many teams that I'm not really sure there's a team in the league that we can't go to or have welcome here and get a good result. So absolutely not shaking hands on that now. If it ends in a draw, then I think you have to look at it in the run of games that we've had and think that's a pretty positive result, and another game unbeaten with just one blip in the season so far, which is a pretty great place to be. But no, I'm absolutely not taking it. And I think I'm going against the grain here slightly, but I wouldn't be remotely surprised to see Forest nick this 1-0, to be honest. I don't think Newcastle's attack has clicked at all this season. I think they're scoring a goal a game, basically, and not creating an awful lot. I think the defence has gone through a lot of change and is, I think, maybe third in the division after just after us for goals conceded. But so they're looking pretty strong in that sense. But with Chris Wood there, he's scoring goals from such low margin opportunities, I suppose, and I fancy us to create. But I wouldn't be remotely surprised to see us shut them out. I don't think it's that creative a side. I think if we can get on top of them and match them in midfield, then I think it could easily be another 1-0 win with our absolutely exceptional defence.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Our defensive numbers are extraordinarily good. They do have those couple of X-factor players in Gordon and Isak, but there's nothing there that otherwise really certainly scares me about it. Let's move on to the other topic I wanted to discuss today before we go. The England squad is announced at 2 p.m. So we'll know the answer to this for people who listen to this later, but if you're live, it's something I wanted to touch on. There's probably Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Anderson and Yates. You could make a genuine case for them being in it, because England are probably going to be without Grealish, Eze, Declan Rice. I don't think will be in it because he seems like he's struggling. Kobbie Mainoo won't be in it. So there's opportunities and openings there. How many, if any, England players will be in the England squad, do you think, Greg?
I think Gibbs-White has the biggest chance. He's back to fitness. He's had a good game, so I'd be surprised. To be honest, I'd be surprised if any. Still, we're not used to having England players, are we? But I think Gibbs-White's the likeliest of the lot. I don't think the others are quite there yet, as much as I would absolutely love it and be so excited for them. And I think it is going to happen to at least two of those three. I'd say Gibbs-White is a strong maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll ask the other lads, just go around the room. Temps, how many, if any, for you in the England squad?
Yeah, Gibbs-White gets selected for me, but the others aren't there. I think they're on that long list now. Is it 60, 65 players that England actively watch? What counts against Yates is he's never been part of that system. And I think the FA in their current way of thinking do like to back the boys that have been through the age group sides, and he hasn't emerged from within that. So I think it's really tough for him to find a way in, even in the absence of Declan Rice. If Hudson-Odoi maintains his form, he has to be part of the conversation. I think there are certain positions where your production just counts above all, and they can see him terrorising fullbacks week after week, and he'd be a weapon in the right kind of shape. But for me, it's Morgan Gibbs-White that gets picked today.
Pete, what about you?
Yeah, slightly boring answer, but I think Gibbs-White is the likely scenario. And actually, I'd sort of begun to expect Anderson to get the nod as well, because there seemed to be a lot of talk about his form for the under-21s, in a sense that they were really considering sort of crystallising his switch from Scotland, etc. But given that he's had a bit of an injury struggle, I just wonder whether that's necessarily really going to be on the cards. Hudson-Odoi is probably pretty close, given that there are injuries on that flank and in that area. I mean, Grealish and Eze not being there gives him a chance, but I think it's probably just going to be Gibbs-White. I mean, on Yatesy, it sort of feels like it's unlikely to ever happen, because he's just such a sort of unfashionable player in many senses, I guess, and this is such a technical England team. But I mean, we say about Yatesy, he rises to every challenge he gets, and I think it would pretty much make my life if he got the call up. So, I will be keeping my fingers crossed for him, and I don't think he'd embarrass himself whatsoever.
Yeah, I think you're right about Yates. Like, I know a few years ago, players like Jake Livermore got multiple caps, but I do think the game and the style of football, international football's moved on from that, or not moved on. That makes it sound like it's better. Moved away from that. But I could see Yates I can't see Yates getting in, sadly, but I'd love it if he did.
It's just very often about control, isn't it, at international level? And I think Yates is sort of a bringer of chaos in a sense that is like magnificent for us, but he's not that guy who's going to just have a foot on the ball, dictate things, keep it all nice and measured. And I think that's probably what they're looking for. Like, I imagine that the potential sort of breakout player in this England squad will be Curtis Jones because he's in outrageous form and looks fantastic. And I think that's more the sort of player they're going to be looking for in central areas.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought Anderson would be in, but because of his injury thing, they might just look elsewhere. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think Anderson, I've said this before, is perfect for what England wants, and in a couple of squads, then he'll definitely be in. But I would absolutely, bring Ryan Yates in just to see Steve Allen jump in the trends. That's content gold, Steve. So make sure Greg films it for us as well. I wouldn't be shocked if Hudson-Odoi was in at all. If not this squad, then the next one with Tuchel in.
That's the thing, the Tuchel thing.
What's the competition for Hudson-Odoi that hasn't been in recent squads that would be fighting for a place? I guess there's Harvey Barnes, but he's not. He's sort of in and out of that Newcastle team, isn't he?
I mean, Anthony Gordon is. He played
in the squad, though, isn't he? I mean, I think he's a banker if he's fit.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if there are other players that are sort of on the fringes. If we've got, no Grealish, no Eze, etc., or is Hudson-Odoi at the top of that list?
I think he is off the top of my head. I know there's other ways you could go about it and other stuff, but is it a Nations League game? I mean, it's something I care so little about. It's basically a glorified friendly, so I would wonder if he might get in. I mean, it's mad. I know it goes back to this, Temps, but as Greg said, it's mad we're having this conversation that there's certainly 3 and potentially 4 Forest players you could make a legitimate case of being England squad members.
Yeah, exactly. But we're 3rd in the Premier League, so you have to look at the component parts of that and which players are shining, could do a job for their countries. There aren't too many non-international players in that 11, are there? It's obviously harder to get a cap in England than it is in for certain other countries. But here's a stat for you, right? So last time Forest won 4 on the bounce was back end of the 94-95 season when we finished 3rd. We beat Norwich, Coventry, Palace, and Man City. And that was part of an unbeaten streak, which also included a 5-game winning run, which culminated with that 7-1 win over Sheffield Wednesday that often pops up on YouTube. So, of course we should be part of this conversation because our players are outperforming other players in the league. And the fact that we're gloriously under the radar, I think, is fantastic. No one expected this from Yatesy. No one expected this from Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's turned into the bargain of the century in the Premier League. So great that we're in this conversation. Great that we can debate it again when other players, no doubt, are called up that we don't agree with. But the longer we maintain this form, and the longer Callum Hudson-Odoi maintains his form, because I think he's the next most likely, beyond Morgan Gibbs-White, to find a place in this side, I would not be surprised to see him back in an England shirt before the season's out.
Do you know,
right, go on, Greg. Sorry.
No, do you know, with Ryan Yates, like my generation, there's not many who don't say like Stuart Pearce wasn't your hero, but there's kids growing up now, and Ryan Yates is that guy. And the thing that Ryan Yates has got even above Stuart Pearce is just he's been with us since he was those kids' age, and what he's done and how he's battled and how he's always been the underdog and always been the player that half the pub were going to drop and say he's not good enough to be in this team. And you can just see him doing it for England as well, and being that one of those all-time Forest legends. He's really got to that position now. So for him to be in the conversation of an England call-up is just incredible. But if he ever actually gets one, an academy player of ours, I don't know when the last time it was an academy player that did it for Forest and then on to England, it'd just be incredible and so deserved.
And how much sweeter as well, Greg, is it that in the sort of wake of Yates's success currently, it's just thousands of people, fans of our own club and oppositions, who've all written him off constantly. He just every time he just makes people look like absolute mugs, and I absolutely love it.
And it's the opposition fans who absolutely despise him now as well. And he's just smiling that away, isn't he? When he did, I think it was against Palace, he was straight up to the away fans, winding him up, and he's taking on that role, and he's loving that role, and he's putting the performance in that means he can do that.
That is what. Sorry to keep butting in, Matt. I was just going to say one more thing on that. Is that is one thing I've noticed about Yates this season, and I don't know whether it's just me fitting something into my own narrative or not. But with his sort of increased level of performance, he also seems really, really comfortable at the level, like in a wider sense as well. Like, you know, the Leicester away game, he was constantly coming up to the fans and revving them up, and just that smile that he's got on his face. He seems just so comfortable with his game and where he's at, and I guess that's just that's a symbol of how it's going on the pitch. But it is really lovely to see.
I was just
Would it be Nigel Clough?
Yeah, because I was looking like Steve Hodge, and I think he got his first caps when he was with Aston Villa. So yeah, probably it was Nigel Clough or someone like that. Yeah. Wow. There you go. I'll predict that Gibbs, White, Hudson-Odoi, and Anderson will be in the England squad in the next.
Wow. Do you know something? That sounded very confident.
No, but it'll look good on a social media clip if it happens, and it won't be clipped up if it doesn't. So we'll just move on from there. Right. Thank you very much to the second sponsors for this episode, as normal. On a Thursday, Home Move Estate Agents. If you're looking to buy or sell, contact Ben Sales as normal. The link is in the description to find out where to get in touch with him and find out what is on the market, or if you're going to put your own house on the market. So thank you very much to Ben for his continued backing. And of course, they are 5-star rated on Google. Right. Anything else you want to discuss? Any other business, Pete Blackburn?
No, nothing from me. I'm just looking forward to another game and seeing if Forest can take off another challenge.
Wonderful. Greg Mitchell, anything from you?
Just excited for Sunday. I love being able to watch Super Saturday and then having an early Sunday game. Just a reminder to get in early because it's the armistice game, isn't it? So there's always queues and people trying to get in. So get in there early, start creating the atmosphere. Very
good. Michael Temple, anything you want to add?
Just a Forest point. We've just done 42 minutes and we haven't acknowledged Chris Wood, really. We've all picked him. We've all decided he's automatically so far ahead of Taiwo at the minute that it's not even a conversation. There's a great article just dropped on The Athletic about the more technical elements of his game, playing on the shoulder of the last defender, his movement, which I'd implore everyone to read. But it's a sustained run of form now, which just demonstrates how worldly wise he is at this level. Just rewatching the opener from the last game, just the movement and then the lack of movement in anticipation of the cross. I'm just in awe of Chris Wood and the form he finds himself in at the minute and what that's done to propel us to the heights we're currently at. So yeah, enjoying being a Forest fan, enjoying watching Chris Wood, and the only reason we're not debating him is because he's an automatic pick at number 9 and he's playing out of his skin.
Good point. A few people in the chat as well saying about Steve Stone being the last England player who came through our academy. I guess obviously he's from the northeast, so you don't always think of him as one of our own, but he did come straight through, obviously. Right, we shall be back tomorrow with the opposition verdict with Rob Smythe, who's been on many times, discussing Newcastle in more depth and the threat that they offer. And then Sunday post-match, it will be at 6:30 because I'm going to the game and taking my lad to it. So God, I really hope we win. I'll be really gutted. Obviously, anyway, you hope that. But if we could win in his first game, it would make such a difference in reeling him in and indoctrinating him as quickly as possible. So yeah, looking forward to it. Right. Thank you very much for your company today. Very much appreciate it. Do hit like if you haven't already. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Much appreciated as ever. Greg Mitchell, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for getting my team right as well. First time, I think. So well done, you, Matt.
Not literally the first time. I mean, it might be, actually. It might be. I'm not sure. Michael Temple and the Temple family, thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas. I'm off to the Magic Kingdom now. So, yeah, perfect way to start the day. And I'll speak to you all soon.
Taking the kids or just on your own?
Yeah, I better take them, hadn't I? As much as I'd like to meet Cinderella and Snow White, I can't pretend.
I just want to see some Mickey Mouse ears on that lovely head of hair.
Right, we shall leave it there. Like I say, back tomorrow, but hope to have your company for that. But if not, we shall see you soon.